Hello. I have some friends that have bought into Trump's line about the economy being so great under him, and they think that somehow things will get rosy. Let's face the fact. Yes, cost of living, as far as groceries, rent, house, they're up. But let's put the blame where they belong. These Republican CEOs have been gouging you, and Republicans in Congress have been blocking any measures, any bills to stop that gouging, because just like the border bill being crushed by them, they want to use it as a campaign issue. Your suffering doesn't matter to them. But let's just take a look. What was the economy like in the past? Well, if we look here, we have a chart of the economic growth from 2008 on projected into the future. Now, in 2008, we were in the Republican Great Recession. And remember the rule. For the first 2 years, a new president is either riding the wave of success or failure of the last president. And it took 2 years for President Obama to pull us out of the Republican Great Recession and give us the growing, great, thriving economy that Donald Trump inherited. Now, once again, for the first 2 years, Donald Trump was riding that wave of success. But it began to slow down. Why did it slow down? Because Trump began putting his policies into effect. And by the third year, we were in a downward trajectory. The economy had began to weaken and become unstable. Of course, Trump was trying to praise it up to try to keep anybody from seeing the truth. Don't believe your lying eyes, believe my words. And we were in a downward trajectory. Then, because of his incompetency and ignoring all the warnings from our intelligence agencies, COVID hit unprotected against Americans. 1 million Americans died and our economy collapsed, all because of Donald Trump. Don't you remember? You couldn't find toilet paper anywhere in the grocery stores. The shelves were empty, all because Donald Trump's incompetency allowed that to happen. Now, people say, well, it will be different this time. Well, not necessarily. But anyhow, President Biden inherited that bad economy from Donald Trump. Remember, the first 2 years, a new president is either riding the wave of success or failure of the last president. And it took 2 years for President Biden to pull us out of the Trump recession. And if Trump gets back in, mark my words, we'll be back into the same type of economic disaster. You see, how can I be sure? Well, let's take a little look through history. Because it is said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, if we go back 100 years ago, from 1920 to 1932, there was three Republican presidents, and they all lowered taxes on the wealthy from 77% down to 25%. This caused a boom in investing and in shaking investments. You can see a previous video I made for more information, make it even longer and clearer. But a tax cut that led to the stock market crash, led to the bank failures, because back then there was no protections like the FDIC, and people lost money, businesses shut down, people lost jobs. And then in 1930, Republicans put the Smoot-Hawley tariff tax in, and other nations followed suit, and the worldwide Great Depression was born. And we were in economic collapse. FDR came in, he put into place the largest tax increase on the wealthy ever seen before. And guess what? We began to pull out of the Republican Great Depression, and we began to grow and grow. And, throughout our history, we've had recessions and depressions and bank failures. But not from the time of FDR's New Deal being fully implemented until the time Ronald Reagan began to dismantle those protections and once again gave tax cuts to the wealthy. Reagan cut taxes on the wealthy, and we had recession, bank failures. George H.W. Bush ended up inheriting that. Reagan kept the economy kind of afloat by borrowing. That's why we went from being virtually having no national debt when Reagan came in to being the debt in the trillions when he left. But then George H.W. followed the same thing, and we were in recession and bank failures. We had bank failures in the 30s and Great Depression in the 30s thanks to Republicans. We had recession again and bank failures again thanks to Republicans, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Then Bill Clinton gets elected, and he puts a very modest tax increase, only a few percentage points on the wealthy. And boy, did they cry. Boy, did they cry. And lie. And then, but the economy began to improve again, and it became better and better, more money in the work. It's because, you see, when the majority of Americans has extra money to spend, guess what we do? We spend it, and the economy gets good. What happens if you had an extra $1 trillion and you just gave it to the wealthy? Well, they might buy a few extra things. Most of it's going to get stuck away. You divide that $1 trillion up among the working class, most of it's going to get spent pretty darn quick, and the economy thrives. And the economy was doing good. The budget was balanced under President Clinton. And then President Republican George W. Bush gets elected. And once again, what do you do? Tax cuts for the rich. And what happened? Bank failures and the Republican Great Recession. And here's where we were. Right here when Barack Obama came in, we were in the Republican Great Recession. Trump comes in. We have a thriving economy. What does he do? Once again, cut taxes on the wealthy. What happened? Recession and bank failures. Don't you remember banks were failing too because of Trump's policies? Yep. And it happened over and over again. Now, let me say, to put it to you very clearly, they tried tax cuts on the wealthy, and Trump wants to now, this time, not only cut their taxes, but he wants to put a tariff on everything coming in. That's what caused the Great Depression. Reagan cut taxes, but he was smart enough not to put a tariff on everything. Bush cut taxes, but went along with that, but he was smart enough not to put a tariff in. Trump wants to put a tariff on everything, and that will cause a Great Depression, at least a recession, as we see here in this chart. Now, here's the thing. I have in my hands a few rocks. Here, I drop one. Wow, it drops to the ground. What a surprise. Here, well, maybe the next one won't fall. Well, how about that? The second one falls just the same way. But the third one, it falls again. Hey, I'm seeing a pattern here. But this fourth, who wants to bet this fourth rock is going to float off into space or drop? Wow, it dropped again. How about the fifth rock? Who here thinks it's going to float or it's going to fall? Well, it falls to the ground. Wait, no, sixth rock, seventh rock, they all fall to the ground. What makes you think that things are going to be any different? You cut taxes on the rich, what you get is recession and depression, and the economy crashes, and who suffers? You and I. But you know who doesn't? The guys at the top. And one of the reasons houses are expensive right now is because of certain real estate dishonest individuals who go in and they put it just a little bit above what the low price, cheating the small guy out from being able to buy it. Then they do a little fixing up, they jack up the price, and they sell it. They make a huge profit. But you were cheated out of a home. There should be a law that wealthy corporations can only buy a house to flip it like that after it's been on the market for 6 months. Then they can go ahead. Until then, it should be up to individuals to be able to have. And they buy apartment complexes, jack up the price. That's why I bought my first house. They were jacking up the price on the apartment complex that I lived in for 14 years. Did they do any improvements? No, it got worse. It was falling apart. They were virtually slumlords. A great, wonderful place destroyed because they were just trying to suck as much money out of it as they could. We saw corporations go down. I worked for 2 companies that went down the tubes because of hostile buyouts, because Reagan changed the laws regulating how these big companies could merge and make monopolies. One company, what they do is they get enough money, they sell off all their assets and then lease them back. That gives them a quick cash revenue. And then they buy another company, do the same thing, roll it over. And then they declare bankruptcy, take all the money out they've got, and they walk away scot-free. You're out of job, maybe out of your pension. I worked for a freight company. Thank God I retired and my pension was through the Teamsters and not through that company. But the same thing. They rolled it over. They bought more companies, took all their assets, sold them, leased them, brought them back in leases. In the long run, they would be losing money, but in the short run, they made a lot of money. And they did that, and then eventually declared bankruptcy, walked away scot-free, so wealthy to the country club, just crying, look how much money I got. People lost their jobs. Hundreds, thousands of people lost their jobs. Thankfully, not their pensions because they were in the Teamsters. And by the way, Joe Biden saved the Central States Teamsters pension, which was in big trouble. But that is what you have to look for. Now, let me ask you, we call that vulture capitalism or venture capitalism. Now, who are the 2 candidates that are a real estate mogul doing these little dirty deals? And who's a venture capitalist? Well, gee, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. So you're going to vote for the type of person that's been killing your jobs and has crashed the economy, and you're believing somehow it's going to do something different. These rocks might come floating all the way up. Hey, guess what? They're not. And neither will the economy do good under Trump because it doesn't work. It's been proven over and over and over again. You cut taxes on the wealthy, it doesn't stimulate the economy. Instead, it causes a slowing down of the economy. You put mass tariffs on everything, it causes economic disaster. Now, yes, tariffs do have a useful purpose. One company, a lot of your jobs that were shipped overseas so they could pay lower wages. Let's say here in the United States, they'd be paying $20 an hour, okay? They go overseas and they're paying $2 an hour. We would put a tariff on that so that so they end up paying that extra $18 an hour that it took to make that product. Now that product costs the same as if it was made in the United States. Now it's more economically feasible and to stay here in the United States rather than go overseas. This is why we got to not vote for Donald Trump or this foolish economic plan of cutting taxes on the wealthy. I've said to other people, I'm retired. I hear people saying, well, my retirement shouldn't be taxed. I'm going to tell you something. I don't mind being taxed. It's not being taxed that's a problem. It's needing more money. I'd rather have a higher income and still pay taxes. Let me ask you this before I close with this. Would you rather have $5,000 saved from paying taxes, or would you rather have an increase of $20,000 for a higher income? 5,000 or 20,000? Me, I say 20,000 because that's the most wise thing to do. Give us more money, increase our wages, increase our retirement. That will make things better. And it keeps the country going because you see, I'm a patriotic American and I'm willing to support my country with my dollars, my life, my blood. And I'll tell you something. I'll close with this. I knew a fellow, he was divorced, and he would talk how much he loved his child, but he never once paid child support, even though he was supposed to. His ex-wife could have got him locked up, but she didn't have the heart to have him locked up. He said he loved his child, but he didn't pay the child support. Now, you can make all the excuses you can, but that hungry child How is that loving? Because you're not taking care of the child. He could have got a second job if it was money, and so the child had enough food to eat. You say you love America and you don't want to pay your taxes. I tell you what, brother, I don't want your type of love. And I sure wouldn't want you as my father. If you say, oh, I love you, but go ahead and starve. America doesn't need people who say they love us, love the country, and don't support it with your financial help. The rich need to start kicking in their fair share. And then our burden would be less. Thank you, everybody. Have a good